The first point to be understood is the ego. A child is born without any knowledge, without any awareness of its own self. And when a child is born, the first thing it becomes aware of is not itself. The first thing it becomes aware of is the other. This is natural because the eyes open outward, the hands touch others, the ears hear others, the tongue tastes food, and the nose smells the outside. All these senses open outward. This is what birth means. Birth means coming into this world, the external world. So when a child is born, it is born into this world. It opens its eyes and sees others. The other means you. The child first becomes aware of the mother. Then, little by little, it becomes aware of its own body. But this too is the other. It also belongs to the world. The child is hungry and feels the body. When its need is satisfied, it forgets the body. This is how the child grows. First, it becomes aware of you, of the other, and then little by little, in contrast to the you, it becomes aware of itself. This awareness is a reflected awareness. The child is not aware of who it is. It is simply aware of the mother and what the mother thinks about it. If the mother smiles, if she appreciates the child, if she says, "You are beautiful," if she hugs and kisses the child feels good about itself. Now, an ego is being born. Through appreciation, through love, through care, the child feels it is good. It feels it has value. It feels it is important. A center is being born. But this center is a reflected center. It is not the true self. The child does not know who it is. It only knows what others think about it. And this is the ego, the reflection, what others think. If no one thinks it is of any use, if no one appreciates it, if no one smiles at it, then also an ego is born, a sick ego, a sad, neglected ego, like a wound, feeling inferior, worthless. This too is the ego. This too is a reflection. At first, the mother and mother at the beginning means the world. Later, others will join the mother, and the world will grow. And as the world grows, the ego becomes more complex because many opinions of others are reflected. The ego is a cumulative phenomenon, a byproduct of living with others. If a child lives totally alone, it will never develop an ego. But that won't help. It will remain like an animal. This doesn't mean it will come to know its true self. No, the true can only be known through the false. So the ego is a necessity. We must go through it. It is a discipline. The true can only be known through the illusion. You cannot know the truth directly. First, you must know what is not true. First, you must encounter the false. Through this encounter, you become capable of knowing the truth. If you know the false is false, the truth will be born within you. The ego is a necessity. It is a social necessity, a social byproduct. Society means everything around you, not you, but everything that surrounds you. Everything except you is society, and everyone reflects. You will go to school, and your teacher will reflect who you are. You will make friends with other children, and they will reflect who you are. Little by little, everyone adds something to your ego, and everyone is trying to shape it so that you don't become a problem for society. They're not interested in you. They are interested in society. Society is interested in itself, and that's how it should be. It is not interested in you becoming a knower of yourself. It is interested in you becoming an efficient part of the social mechanism. You should fit the pattern. So they are trying to give you an ego that will fit into society. They teach you morality. Morality means giving you an ego that will fit into society. If you are immoral, you will always be a misfit somewhere or other. That is why we put criminals in prisons, not because they have done something wrong, not because putting them in prison will improve them. No, it's simply because they do not fit. They create problems. They have certain types of egos that society does not approve of. If society approves, everything is fine. A man kills someone, he is a murderer. And the same man, during war, kills thousands, and he becomes a great hero. Society is not concerned with murder, but murder should be done for society. Then everything is fine. Society is not concerned with morality. Morality simply means that you must fit into society. If society is at war, morality changes. If society is at peace, there is a different morality. Morality is a social policy, it is diplomacy, and every child must be educated in such a way that it fits into society. And that's all because society is interested in efficient members. Society is not interested in you coming to self-knowledge. Society creates an ego because the ego can be controlled and manipulated. The self can never be controlled or manipulated. There has never been a case of society controlling the self. It is not possible, and the child needs a center. The child is absolutely unconscious of its own center. Society gives it a center, and the child slowly becomes convinced that this is its center, the ego given by society. A child comes home. If it was the top student in the class, the whole family is happy. You hug and kiss the child, and you hold the child in your lap and start dancing and say, "What a wonderful child. You are a source of pride for us." You are giving it an ego, a subtle ego. And if the child comes home beaten, failed, a flop, it couldn't pass, or it took the last place, then no one appreciates it, and the child feels rejected. It will try harder next time because the center feels shaken. The ego is always shaken, always looking for food, for someone to appreciate it. That's why you are continuously asking for attention. I heard Mullah Nasruddin and his wife were leaving a party, and Mullah said, "Darling, has anyone ever told you that you are fascinating, beautiful, wonderful?" His wife felt very, very good, very happy. She said, "I wonder why no one has ever told me that." Then Nasruddin replied, "But then where did you get that idea from?" You get from others the idea of who you are. It is not a direct experience. It is from others that you get the idea of who you are. They shape your center. That center is false because you carry your true center within you. This is not anyone's business. No one shapes it. You come with it. You are born with it. So you have two centers. One center with which you come, which is given to you by existence itself. This is the self. And the other center, which is given to you by society, the ego. It is something false, and it is a great trick. Through the ego, society is controlling you. You have to behave in a certain way because only then will society appreciate you. You have to walk in a certain way. You have to laugh in a certain way. You have to follow certain conduct, a morality, a code. Only then will society appreciate you. And if it doesn't, your ego will be shaken. And when the ego is shaken, you no longer know where you are, who you are. Others gave you the idea. This idea is the ego. Try to understand it as deeply as possible because it has to be thrown away. And unless you throw it away, you will never be able to reach the self. Because being fixated on the center, you cannot move and you cannot look at the self. And remember, there will be a middle period, an interval, when the ego's shattered, when you won't know who you are, when you won't know where you're going, when all boundaries will dissolve. You will be simply confused, a chaos. Because of this chaos, you are afraid of losing the ego. But it has to be this way. We have to go through the chaos before reaching the true center. And if you are brave, the period will be short. If you are fearful and fall back into the ego again, and again start adjusting it, then the period can be very, very long. Many lives can be wasted. I heard a little child was visiting his grandparents. He was only 4 years old. At night, when the grandmother was putting him to sleep, he suddenly started crying and screaming, "I want to go home. I'm afraid of the dark." But the grandmother said, "I know very well that at home you also sleep in the dark. I never saw the light on, so why are you afraid here?" The boy said, "Yes, that's true, but that's my darkness. This darkness is completely unknown. Even with darkness, you feel, this is mine. Outside unknown darkness. With the ego, you feel, this is my darkness. It may be problematic, it may create many torments, but still, it is mine. Something to hold on to, something to grasp, something underfoot. You are not in a vacuum, not in an emptiness. You may be unhappy, but at least you are. Even being unhappy gives you a sense of, I am. Stepping away from that, fear takes over. You start feeling afraid of the unknown darkness and chaos. Because society has managed to clear a small part of your being. It's like entering a forest. You make a small clearing, you clean a piece of land, you make a fence, you make a small hut, you make a small garden, a lawn, and you feel good beyond your fence, the forest, the jungle. Here, everything is fine. You've planned everything. That's how it happened. Society cleared a small part of your consciousness. It only cleaned a small part completely and fenced it. Everything is fine there. All your universities are doing this. All culture and all conditioning aim only at cleaning a part so you can feel at home there. Then you start to feel afraid. Beyond the fence, there is danger. Beyond the fence, you are, just as inside the fence you are, and your conscious mind is just a part 1/10 of your entire being. 9/10 are waiting in the dark. And within those 9/10, somewhere, your true center is hidden. We need to be bold, courageous. We need to take a step into the unknown. For a certain time, all boundaries will be lost. For a certain time, you will feel dazed. For a certain time, you will feel very afraid and shaken, as if there had been an earthquake. But if you are brave and do not fall back, if you do not fall back into the ego, but keep going forward, there is a hidden center within you, a center you have been carrying for many lives. This is your soul, the self. Once you get close to it, everything changes, everything settles again. But now this settlement is not made by society. Now everything becomes a cosmos and not a chaos. A new order arises. But this is not society's order. It is existence's own order. It is what Buddha calls Dharma, Lao Tzu calls Tao, Heraclitus calls Logos. It is not made by man. It is existence's own order. Then, suddenly, everything becomes beautiful. And for the first time, truly beautiful, because things made by man cannot be beautiful. At best, you can hide their ugliness, that's all. You can adorn them, but they can never be beautiful. The difference is the same as between a real flower and a plastic or paper flower. The ego is a plastic flower, dead. It is not a flower, it just looks like a flower. Even linguistically, calling it a flower is wrong, because a flower is something that blossoms. And this plastic thing is just a thing, not a blossom. It is dead. There is no life in it. You have a center that blossoms within you. That is why Hindus call it a lotus, the 1,000-petaled lotus. 1,000 means infinite petals. The center blooms continuously. It never stops. It never dies. But you are satisfied with a plastic ego. There are some reasons why you are satisfied with a dead thing. There are many advantages. One is that the dead thing never dies. It was never alive. So you can have plastic flowers. And in a way, they are good. They are permanent. They are not eternal, but they are permanent. The real flower, the flower that is out there in the garden, is eternal, but it is not permanent. And the eternal has its own way of being. Eternal. The eternal's way is to be born many, many times and to die. Through death, the eternal renews itself, rejuvenates itself. To us, it seems that the flower has died. It never dies. It simply changes bodies. So it is always fresh. It leaves the old body and enters a new body. It blossoms somewhere else. It never stops blossoming. But we cannot see the continuity because continuity is invisible. We only see one flower, another flower. We never see the continuity. It is the same flower that blossomed yesterday. It is the same sun, but in a different dress. The ego has a certain quality. It is dead. It is plastic. And it is very easy to get because others give it to you. You don't need to seek it. No search is necessary for it. That's why, unless you become a seeker of the unknown, you have not yet become an individual. You are simply a part of the crowd. You are just a mob. When you don't have an authentic center, how can you be an individual? The ego is not individual. The ego is a social phenomenon. It is society, not you, but it gives you a role in society, a position in society. And if you are satisfied with it, you will lose the whole opportunity of finding the self. And that is why you are so unhappy. With a plastic life, how can you be happy? With a false life, how can you be ecstatic and blissful? And that ego creates many torments, millions of them. You cannot see it because it is your darkness. You are in tune with it. You never noticed that all sorts of torments happen through the ego. It cannot make you blessed. It can only make you miserable. The ego is hell. Whenever you are suffering, simply try to observe and analyze. And you will find that somewhere the ego is the cause of the suffering, and the ego keeps finding reasons to suffer. Once I was staying at Mullah Nasruddin's house. His wife was saying very unpleasant things about Mullah Nasruddin, with much anger, harshness, aggression, very violent, on the verge of exploding. And Mullah Nasruddin was just sitting silently, listening. Then, suddenly, she turned to him and said, "So, once again, you are arguing with me." Mullah said, "But I didn't say a single word." The wife replied, "I know that, but you are listening very aggressively." You are an egoist, as everyone is. Some are very crude, evident, and these are not so difficult. Others are very subtle, deep, and these are the real problems. The ego continuously clashes with others because every ego is extremely insecure about itself. It has to be. It's a false thing. When you have nothing in your hands, but believe you have something, then there will be a problem. If someone says, "There is nothing," a fight immediately starts because you also feel that there is nothing. The other person makes you aware of that fact. The ego is false. It is nothing. And you know this too. How can you not know it? It's impossible. A conscious being, how can they not know that the ego is simply false? And then others say, there is nothing. And whenever others say there is nothing, they strike a wound, they speak a truth. And nothing hurts more than the truth. You have to defend yourself, because if you don't defend yourself, if you don't become defensive, where will you be? You will be lost. The identity will be broken. You have to defend yourself and fight. This is the conflict. A man who reaches the self never finds himself in any conflict. Others may come and clash with him, but he is never in conflict with anyone. It happened once that a Zen master was walking down a street. A man came running up and struck him hard. The master fell. He soon got up and continued walking in the same direction he had been going, without even looking back. A disciple was with the master. He was simply shocked. He said, "Who is that man?" What does this mean? If we live like this, anyone can come and kill us. And you didn't even look at that person, who they are, and why they did it. The master said, "That's their problem, not mine." You may clash with an enlightened one, but that is your problem, not theirs. And if you get hurt in that clash, that's also your problem. They cannot hurt you. It's like hitting a wall. You will get hurt, but the wall did not hurt you. The ego is always looking for some problem. Why? Because if no one pays attention to it, the ego feels hungry. It lives off attention. So even if someone is fighting with you and angry at you, even that is good, because at least you are getting attention. If someone loves you, that's fine. If someone isn't loving you, then even anger will do. At least attention is coming to you. But if no one is giving you any attention, if no one thinks you are someone important, noteworthy, then how will you feed your ego? Other people's attention is necessary. You attract the attention of others in millions of ways. You dress a certain way, try to look beautiful, behave well, become very polite. You transform. When you feel the type of situation that is unfolding, you immediately transform so that people give you attention. This is a deep form of begging. A true beggar is one who asks and demands attention. A true emperor is one who lives in their interiority. They have their own center. They don't depend on anyone else. Buddha sitting under his Bodhi tree, if the entire world were to suddenly disappear, would it make any difference to Buddha? None. It wouldn't make any difference at all, absolutely none. If the entire world disappeared, it wouldn't make any difference because he has reached the center. But you, if your wife runs away, if she asks for a divorce, if she leaves you for someone else, you are completely shattered. Because she was giving you attention, affection, love, and was always around you, helping you feel like someone. Your entire empire is lost. You are simply broken. You start thinking about ending your life. Why? Why, if your wife leaves you, should end your life? Why, if your husband leaves you, should you commit self-inflicted death? Because you don't have your own center. The wife was giving you the center. The husband was giving you the center. That's how people exist. That's how people become dependent on each other. It's a deep slavery. The ego must be a slave. It depends on others. And only a person who has no ego is, for the first time, a master. They stop being a slave. Try to understand this and start looking for the ego, not in others. That's none of your business, but in yourself. Every time you feel unhappy, immediately close your eyes and try to find out where the unhappiness is coming from, and you will always discover that it is the false center that has clashed with someone. You expected something, and it didn't happen. You expected something, and exactly the opposite happened. Your ego is shaken. You become unhappy. Just look, whenever you are unhappy, try to find the reason. The causes are not outside you. The basic cause is within you. But you always look outside. You always ask, who is making me unhappy? Who is causing my anger? Who is causing my distress? And if you look outside, you won't see it. Just close your eyes and look within. The source of all unhappiness, anger, and distress is hidden within you. It's your ego. And if you find the source, it will be easy to go beyond it. If you can see that it's your own ego causing the problems, you will prefer to let it go. Because no one can carry the source of unhappiness once they've understood it. And remember, there's no need to abandon the ego. You cannot abandon it. If you try to abandon it, you will only be achieving another, more subtle ego that says, I become humble. Don't try to be humble. That's the ego again. Hidden, but not dead. Don't try to be humble. No one can try to be humble, and no one can create humility through their own effort. No. When the ego no longer exists, humility comes to you. It's not a creation. It's a shadow of your true center. And a truly humble man is neither humble nor egotistical. He is simply simple. He doesn't even realize that he is humble. If you realize that you are humble, the ego still exists. Look at the humble people. There are millions who believe they are very humble. They bow easily, but observe them. They are the subtlest egotists. Now, humility is their source of nourishment. They say, I am humble, and they look at you, expecting you to value them. They would like you to say, you are truly humble. In fact, you are the most humble person in the world. No one is as humble as you. And then observe the smile that appears on their faces. What is the ego? The ego is a hierarchy that says, no one compares to me. It can feed off humility. No one compares to me. I am the most humble. It once happened. A fakir, a beggar, was praying in a mosque early in the morning while it was still dark. It was some religious day for the Muslims, and he was praying, saying, I am nobody. I am the poorest of the poor, the greatest sinner among sinners. Suddenly, there was another person praying. It was the emperor of that country, and he hadn't realized that there was someone else there praying. It was dark, and the emperor was also saying, I am nobody. I am nothing. I am just a void, a beggar at your doorstep. When he heard that someone else was saying the same thing, the emperor said, Stop. Who is trying to outdo me? Who are you? How dare you say, in front of the emperor, that you are nobody when he is saying he is nobody? That's how the ego works. It is so subtle. Its ways are so subtle and cunning, you have to be very, very alert. Only then will you notice it. Don't try to be humble. Just try to see that all the torment, all the anguish comes through it. Just observe. There's no need to abandon it. You can't abandon it. Who will abandon it? Then the abandoner will become the ego. It always comes back. Whatever you do, stay out of it. Look and observe. Whatever you do, modesty, humility, simplicity, nothing will help. Only one thing is possible, and that is to simply observe and see that the ego is the origin of all unhappiness. Don't say it. Don't repeat it. Observe. Because if I say that it's the origin of all unhappiness and you repeat it, then it will be useless. You have to come to this understanding. Whenever you're unhappy, just close your eyes and don't try to find some external cause. Try to realize where this misery is coming from. It is coming from your own ego. If you continuously perceive and understand, and the understanding that the ego is the cause becomes deeply rooted, one day you will suddenly see that it has disappeared. No one abandons it. No one can abandon it. You simply see. It simply disappears. Because the very understanding that the ego is the cause of all unhappiness becomes the abandonment. The very understanding means the disappearance of the ego. And you are so brilliant at seeing the ego in others. Anyone can see the ego in others. But when it comes to your own, the problem arises. Because you don't know the territory, you have never traveled through it. The whole path toward the divine, toward the supreme, has to pass through this territory of the ego. The false must be understood as false. The origin of misery must be understood as the origin of misery. Then it simply disappears. When you know it's poison, it disappears. When you know it's fire, it disappears. When you know it's hell, it disappears. And then you never say, I abandon the ego. Then you just laugh at this whole story, this joke, for you are the creator of all the unhappiness. I was looking at some Charlie Brown cartoons. In one scene, he is playing with blocks, building a house with toy blocks. He is sitting in the middle of the blocks, raising the walls. At some point, he is surrounded. He has raised walls all around, and he starts shouting, "Help! Help!" He did the whole thing. Now he's surrounded, trapped. This is childish, but it is precisely what you did. You built a house all around you, and now you are shouting, "Help! Help!" And the torment becomes 1,000,000 times greater, because there are those who help, being in the same boat. It happened that a very attractive woman went to the psychiatrist for the first time. The psychiatrist said, "Come closer, please." When she came closer, he simply jumped up, hugged, and kissed her. She was shocked. Then he said, "Now sit down. That solves my problem. Now, what's yours?" The problem multiplies because there are people who want to help, being in the same boat, and they would like to help because when you help someone, the ego feels very good because you are a great savior, a great guru, a master. You are helping so many people. The larger your crowd of followers, the better you feel. But you are in the same boat. You cannot help. On the contrary, you will harm. People who still have their own problems can't be much help. Only someone who has no problems of their own can help you. Only then is there the clarity to see through you. A mind that has no problems of its own can see you. You become transparent. A mind that has no problems of its own can see through itself. And that's why it becomes capable of seeing through others. In the West, there are many schools of psychoanalysis, many schools, and no help is reaching people. But instead, they are doing harm. Because the people who are helping others, or trying to help, or pretending to help, are in the same boat. It's hard to see your own ego. It's very easy to see the ego in others, but that's not the point. You can't help them. Try to see your own ego. Simply observe. Don't be in a hurry to abandon it. Just observe. The more you observe, the more capable you become. Suddenly, one day, you simply see that it has disappeared, and when it disappears by itself, only then does it truly disappear. There is no other way. You cannot abandon it prematurely. It falls exactly like a dry leaf. The tree isn't doing anything. Just a breeze, a situation, and the dry leaf simply falls. The tree doesn't even notice that the dry leaf has fallen. It makes no noise. It makes no announcement. Nothing. The dry leaf simply falls and shatters on the ground. That's all. When you have matured through understanding, through awareness, and have fully realized that the ego is the cause of all your unhappiness, one day you simply see the dry leaf falling. It lands on the ground and dies by itself. You didn't do anything, so you can't claim that you let it fall. You see that it simply disappeared, and then the true center arises. And this true center is the soul, the self, the God, the truth, or whatever you wish to call it. It is nameless, so all names are good. You can give it any name you like. The matrix is complex, but each of us holds a part of the solution. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and together we'll see beyond appearances.